Our protagonist, Seun, may be cool as a cucumber on the surface, but inside, his heart bleeds. Despite his weakened state, his mind, sharp as a tack and powerful as the Category 5 hurricane. After a brutal and emotional massacre at his former school, a place that became a literal battlefield, where Seun fought alongside two of his closest bros, friends tighter than two peas in a pod, life takes a dark turn. One buddy lies comatose in a hospital bed, his future uncertain. The other is gone, vanished without a chance to say goodbye. Fuels his resolve to start anew. He transfers to Yunjanghai, hoping to trade violence for normalcy, dreaming of a typical high school experience. Mornings hitting the books, afternoons slurping ramen, and evenings studying, the usual minus the whole, fighting for survival. Thing, Yunjanghai, with a name as cute and cuddly as a baby panda, turns out to be anything but. It's a den of delinquents masquerading as an educational institution, a place where textbooks are optional, but brass knuckles are standard issue. Teachers teach and bounce, knowing that lingering only increases the chances of getting sucked into the drama vortex. Seun steps onto campus, the wind dramatically whipping his hair like he's in a Kdrama, silently hoping for a peaceful, crazy, free existence. But life, as we know, loves to throw curveballs, especially at our protagonist. 3 days later, Seun realizes that sanity is a survival liability in Yunjiang. The hallways reek of a potent and unsettling mix of cigarette smoke, stale sweat, and the distinctive aroma of Bullies. It's like walking through a cologne factory that specializes in the scent of impending doom. And at the heart of this chaos is Hyo Man, the school's top dog, the kingpin running a lucrative black market operation for stolen cell phones, sourced from his network of student thieves. Hyo Man's face is perpetually puckered like he's sucking on a lemon, and his walk screams, ready to rumble with any object, animate or inanimate, that dares to cross his path. His loyal sidekick Juntae is a classic example of a good kid gone wrong, destined to play the regretful henchman in this real-life high school action movie. Juntae started as a regular, decent student, making an honest living delivering milk to Hyo Man's crew. But day after day, the pressure mounts, and he's slowly but surely transformed into a reluctant phone thief. Nobody wants this gig, but at Yunjanghai, the survival options are limited: victim, bully, or locker thief. As fate, or rather, the ironclad laws of narrative convenience would have it, Juntae's next target is Seun's phone. Before class, he receives the usual bag of confiscated phones from the homeroom teacher. Tasked with their seamless return at the end of the day, he ducks into the bathroom, contemplates his increasingly morally ambiguous life choices, and eventually slips Seun's phone into his pocket. The school day drags on as normal until the final bell rings, and Seun retrieves his phone, only to find it missing. Bad luck for Juntae. He's second to last to leave the classroom, and therefore second to last to get his phone back. Right behind Seun. Busted. Seun, noticing his missing phone, confronts Juntae. Juntae, flustered, launches into a rambling, almost epic explanation. A veritable Three Kingdoms saga of excuses. Surprisingly, Seun cuts him short, says little, and walks away. Juntae, left reeling, delivers Seun's phone to Hyo Man's crew and heads off. Later, in the school hallway, he tries to engage Seun again, but gets completely ignored, the weight of his guilt heavy on his shoulders. Juntae pursues Seun, attempting to justify his actions. Seun, however, remains ice cold. No yelling, no punches thrown, just a quiet, devastating statement. "You're a coward." The words hit Juntae like a soul-crushing combo attack, a verbal nuke that detonates his carefully constructed facade. That night, Seun returns home, and as usual, takes a sleeping pill, hoping for some much-needed rest. But sleep evades him. Instead, he catches the first bus to the hospital, where Suho, his comatose friend, still lies motionless. He visits Suho not just out of loyalty, but to confess his own perceived cowardice. He's tormented by the coward label he'd flung at Juntae, convinced that he is the true coward. Desperate for connection, Seun texts Suho, despite knowing there will be no reply. The next morning, back at school, Seun stumbles upon a scene straight out of a high school drama. Juntae being bullied on the stairs. He flashes back to his own experiences, the relentless torment he endured at his old school. And for a moment, he imagines himself stepping in, a pen-wielding hero rescuing the underdog. But the fantasy fades, snapped back to reality by the bully's taunts. He bypasses the scene, leaving Juntae to his fate. Later that day, Juntae approaches Seun again, confessing to stealing his phone. A heart-to-heart ensues, with Juntae pleading for Seun's guidance, desperate to shed his cowardice and change his life. But Seun, still reeling from his past betrayals, remains unmoved and walks away. That evening, as Seun walks home, he witnesses Hyoman meeting with his shady associates. He discovers their hideout, a den overflowing with second-hand phones. It turns out Hyoman's supply is running low, and he's groveling to the ringleader for a bigger cut of the weekly haul. This guy is seriously bad news. Juntae, deeply affected by Seun's words, spends the night wrestling with the concept of change. The next morning, armed with a pair of wire cutters, he heads to Hyoman's locker, determined to retrieve the stolen phones and make amends. Juntae, feeling a pang of remorse, apologizes to the students he'd robbed, returning their phones with the bonus of a portable charger. The next morning, Seun arrives at class to find his phone on his desk, with a short, apologetic note from Juntae. A flicker of something akin to emotion crosses his face, but his usual icy demeanor quickly returns. Peace, however, is a fleeting commodity in this high school jungle. Hyoman, discovering Juntae's betrayal, is furious. His lucrative second-hand phone operation is compromised, his authority undermined. Enraged, he confronts Juntae, unleashing a brutal beating. Juntae, newly emboldened, tries to withstand the onslaught. As Seun watches, Juntae absorbs punches and kicks to the head, blood flowing freely. The scene triggers a visceral flashback for Seun, reminding him of his past torment. Juntae is pummeled, dragged, and treated like a human punching bag. The surrounding students remain passive observers, knowing intervention guarantees retaliation. Amidst the chaos, Seun stands with his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. While others might panic, he seems to be calculating wind speed and trajectory, a storm brewing behind his cool face. The crowd falls silent, the sound of each blow echoing like a ceremonial drum. Suddenly, Seun steps forward, stunning everyone. Someone dares to challenge the king. With chilling composure, he warns Hyoman to stop, to recognize his limits. Seun just wants to live a quiet refrigerator in the basement existence. But the world around him refuses to cooperate. Before he can even finish his breakfast the next morning, Hyoman's agitated underlings are buzzing about a missed opportunity for a good brawl. One particularly irate student, sporting a green shirt, considers reporting the incident to a teacher, but then gets swept up in the sudden rush of students. Heading towards the latest hotspot of drama, word has spread of another bullying incident, and the main player is none other than Hyoman. Emboldened by the absence of the true kingpin, Hyoman is on a power trip, acting like he owns the place. Anyone who wants to do anything needs his permission, or they can expect to be groveling for forgiveness at the school gates. The scene shifts to Seun, who happens upon Hyoman attempting to gang up on a weaker student. But before Hyoman can land a punch, Seun, with almost supernatural anticipation, sidesteps the attack, leaving Hyoman swinging at air in broad daylight in front of a dozen gawking students. Humiliating a wannabe gangster in public? That's a recipe for disaster. Hyoman explodes, ready to tear Seun apart. Just as he's about to attack, Hyoman's lieutenant, the guy in the green shirt, Hyuntak, steps in. He may think Hyoman is an idiot, but he's still fiercely loyal. With a swift kick, Hyuntak puts Hyoman in his place, sending him scurrying away in shame. Hyuntak tries to connect with Seun, but Seun, ever the stoic, simply retrieves Juntae's glasses and walks away. This lack of gratitude stings Hyuntak, so he calls Seun back. Seun, maintaining his aloof demeanor, offers a perfunctory thanks and escorts the battered Juntae towards the nurse's office. But the nurse's office is a no-go. The school nurse, seeing Juntae's bruised and bloodied state, would be obligated to report the incident. A report means Hyo-man finds out, and that's a recipe for disaster, likely a repeat of a certain unpleasant incident back in 8th grade. So Juntae steers Seun towards a secret room. Medicine stash. Despite the clandestine-sounding name, the room is surprisingly cozy. Seun cleaned Juntae's wounds, and an awkward silence hung in the air. Before any meaningful eye contact can happen, a group of fresh-faced students barge in, peppering Juntae with insincere questions. Annoyed, he gets up and leaves. Meanwhile, Hyuntak's crew sits around gossiping about Hyo-man, when suddenly Hyo-man himself appears, as if on cue, challenging them to say it to his face. Earlier, he'd run into Hyuntak, but only dared to exchange a few snarky remarks. Nothing physical. His bark is definitely bigger than his bite, like a broke CEO flexing on social media. After Seun rescues Juntae from being locked in a storage room, because of course that happens, a strange bond begins to form between the two. Overflowing with gratitude, Juntae buys Seun a mountain of vitamins and supplements. He's surprisingly perceptive, noticing Seun's constant sleepiness and deciding to help his new friend catch some quality Z's. The next morning, the two share lunch, a picture of burgeoning bromance. Seun cheerfully thanks Juntae for the miracle sleep aid, while Juntae eagerly recommends a multivitamin. Seun eyes the pills with a hint of suspicion, wondering if there's an ulterior motive, but ultimately decides to trust Juntae's seemingly good intentions. Later, they find themselves sitting on the school grounds, sharing stories. It seems like ages since Juntae has enjoyed a peaceful lunch break, without fear of being ambushed. Just as they're settling into the comfortable rhythm of high school gossip, Hyo-man shows up, dropping a bombshell. Hyuntak is targeting them. They need to watch their backs. But just as things are getting interesting, Hyuntak spots Hyo-man, getting chummy with our unlikely duo. His eyes narrow with suspicion. The plot thickens as Hyo-man, ever the opportunist, approaches Hyuntak with a brazen lie. He's only getting close to Seun to recruit him as his next protege. Meanwhile, Seun and Juntae, sensing the escalating tension, decide to make a quick escape before they get caught in the crossfire. As they hurry back to class, Juntae is suddenly hit with an urgent need to use the restroom. He dashes into the bathroom, only to be ambushed and kidnapped by Hyo-man's goons. Meanwhile, Hyo-man himself storms into Hyuntak's clubroom, trashing the place like a rock star on a rampage. Back in the classroom, Seun notices Juntae's absence. The teacher, oblivious as ever, continues with the lesson. But Seun is getting worried. He frantically tries to call Juntae, but can't get through. Just then, Hyo-man appears, feigning concern, and informs Seun that Hyuntak has taken Juntae. He urges Seun to rescue his friend, adding a touch of dramatic flair. Seun knows this is a setup, but he doesn't realize the extent of Hyo-man's scheming. Hyo-man has already spread rumors throughout the school about a showdown between Seun and Hyuntak. It's all part of his Machiavellian plan to have them destroy each other, leaving him to claim the throne as the undisputed king of Yunjanghai. Hyuntak, furious about the destruction of his clubroom and the added insult of having his handsome face burned, because, of course, that happened too, confronts Seun, demanding answers about Juntae's whereabouts. He relentlessly taunts Seun, dredging up painful memories. Seun snaps, and the two launch into a furious brawl, trading insults and blows with equal fervor. Juntae, meanwhile, watches the spectacle unfold like a spectator at a sporting event. Just as the fight reaches its peak, Hyo-man arrives with his crew, like uninvited guests crashing a party, adding another layer of drama. It turns out they plan to swoop in and take down both weakened rivals, solidifying their dominance. Forced into an uneasy alliance, Seun and Hyuntak team up to fight off Hyo-man's goons. Just as Hyo-man is about to deliver a potentially fatal blow, a voice rings out, freezing everyone in their tracks. The cavalry has arrived. It's the legendary Hoo-min, his entrance accompanied by a dramatic soundtrack. Hyo-man, upon seeing Hoo-min, blanches like a deer caught in headlights, instantly dropping his volleyball in a cowardly but telling gesture. Hoo-min, without missing a beat, throws a basketball with pinpoint accuracy, knocking Hyo-man flat. He then turns to Si-eun, his gaze a mixture of familiarity and curiosity, leaving Si-eun momentarily speechless. Hoo-min questions Si-eun, but Si-eun, in classic fashion, remained stoic, giving nothing away. Hoo-min approached Han Si-eun with a few questions, but Si-eun, in his typical aloof and stoic manner, completely ignored him. With Si-eun giving him the cold shoulder, Hoo-min turned to Hyun-tak to check in on him. Meanwhile, Hyo-man's crew rushed in to assess the damage to their leader. Hoo-min had barely gotten a few words out to Hyun-tak before being chewed out for causing the basketball team's suspension. Taking the blame, Hoo-min clutched his head, lamenting his decision to dye his hair bright red the day before, convinced it was the source of his bad luck. As he sat there wallowing in regret, Hyo-man's goons suddenly appeared, ready to launch a cowardly sneak attack. But things didn't go as planned. Hoo-min wasn't an easy target. Single-handedly, he sent them scattering like chickens. A scene straight out of a slapstick comedy. After dealing with these useless thugs, Hyun-tak unexpectedly approached Si-eun to apologize for the earlier misunderstanding. Hoo-min, witnessing this, was stunned by the gesture. Seizing the opportunity, he lectured his underlings on the importance of sincere apologies, demonstrating the proper way to bow and express remorse, just like those idols apologizing to their fans online. But the ice-cold Si-eun remained uninterested, turning and walking away with Jun-tae in a display of cool indifference. That only further impressed Hoo-min. He acknowledged that maintaining such an effortlessly cool demeanor wasn't easy. Hoo-min arrived at school like a K-pop idol, greeted with cheers and excitement everywhere he went. He reveled in the attention, embracing his role as the flamboyant team captain. Students greeted him with finger hearts, as if he were filming a vlog. Inside the classroom, Hyun-tak was already waiting, ready to lecture Hoo-min about the basketball tournament fiasco. They argued back and forth, Hyun-tak gesturing dramatically, pounding the table like he was pouring his heart out in a late-night confession. Just as their argument reached a fever pitch, Si-eun and Jun-tae appeared, looking like exasperated referees, their expressions clearly conveying a "haven't you two grown up yet?" message. They promptly reported the two to the teacher. All four boys ended up in the teacher's office, each wearing a "I wasn't involved, but I'm somehow implicated" expression. The teacher proceeded to scold them thoroughly, delivering a structured and strategic lecture on proper behavior. When Si-eun tried to explain, the teacher threatened to call his parents and have him expelled. At this tense moment, Hoo-min executed a surprising maneuver. He forced both Si-eun and Hyun-tak to bow their heads and apologize to the teacher, effectively silencing any further protests. Leaving the teacher's office, the group exchanged apologies. Relieved to have survived the ordeal, Si-eun quietly mentioned his dislike of having his head touched. However, Hoo-min, oblivious to the concept of personal space, and as persistent as a piece of taffy, interpreted Si-eun's statement as an invitation. He playfully ruffled Si-eun's hair as if petting a puppy, leaving Si-eun momentarily stunned and confused. Si-eun and Jun-tae sat together, peacefully drinking milk, no longer the targets of bullying. Jun-tae was visibly moved by the newfound peace Si-eun had brought into his life. He looked at Si-eun with an almost worshipful gaze, the way one might look at their savior. If Si-eun had declared himself the light at the end of the tunnel, Jun-tae would have followed him without hesitation. That evening, Si-eun's mother lectured him about the dangers of fighting, but he tuned her out completely, his expression blank, like he'd switched to airplane mode. His withdrawn and silent demeanor, like a refrigerator unplugged, stemmed from a painful past. Since the incident, Si-eun and Jun-tae had been spending more time with Hyun-tak and Hyun's group. Everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, their interactions reminiscent of a light-hearted high school drama, except for Seun, who while present, remained emotionally distant. Meanwhile, Hyo-man was nursing his wounds after being soundly defeated by Baekjin. His crime? Failing to prove himself worthy of joining the union. Watching Hyo-man get beaten down was a mixture of satisfying and slightly pitiful. He was clearly playing the role of the most unsuccessful villain of all time. A knee to the gut and a backhand to the face were all it took to bring him down. He'd gone from top dog to union's doormat. Later, Hoo-min's crew gathered at his father's chicken restaurant to catch up. Seun was absent, visiting a friend. The group discussed the events that transpired during Hoo-min's absence. Well, not quite the whole group. Hoo-min mostly received a scolding from his father for being a freeloader, and his chicken dinner was deducted from his allowance. The scene shifted abruptly to Seun on his way to visit Suho, his friend who had been in a coma since the first season. As Seun filled out the visitor's form, Hoo-min called to check if he was being bothered, but Seun remained aloof, insisting he didn't need anyone's concern. Upon arrival, he was surprised to find Sung-ji, Baekjin's right-hand man, waiting. Sung-ji hadn't come to visit any patients. He was there specifically for Seun, like a debt collector delivering a final notice. He spoke cryptically, essentially telling Seun to join them, and that protecting his friends was his responsibility. With that, he turned and left, leaving Seun perplexed. Following Sung-ji's instructions, Seun went to meet Baekjin. He navigated through a loud, vibrant entertainment venue, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of a hospital, and a facade for Baekjin's true operations. The pulsing music and flashing lights assaulted his senses. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally reached his destination. Sung-ji wasn't there. Seun had to announce himself. Baekjin even made him wait. But Seun, with his usual impassive expression, remained patient. He declared that if he saw Baekjin or his men anywhere near Suo's hospital again, he would wipe them out, showing them the true meaning of karma. Baekjin responded with a condescending smirk. Then, Seun casually revealed the solution to a complex problem Baekjin had been struggling with, leaving him utterly speechless. Baekjin pressured Seun to abandon Hoo-min in exchange for peace. And Seun agreed. He agreed with a stoic expression, but his heart pounded like a drum, knowing he just signed a contract with immense pressure. After Seun left, Baekjin sat in contemplation. Sung-ji entered, attempting to engage in some friendly conversation, inquiring about what Baekjin was thinking. But Baekjin remained unresponsive, his face as blank as an inkless printer, his mind consumed by a single obsession, Yoon Jong-hai. To vent his frustration, he ordered his men to vandalize Hoo-min's father's restaurant. Hoo-min, in the middle of push-ups, received a call from the police about the incident and rushed the scene. He immediately urged his father to apologize and smooth things over, but his father remained defiant. Sung-ji presented the scene, delivered a taunting message to Hoo-min, making it clear that they were no longer playing games. They were going to war. As Sung-ji departed, Baekjin called Hoo-min, scheduling a showdown for the next day, implying that a fight was inevitable. The following morning, Seun entered his new friend's hangout, his face grim, and announced that he had met with Baekjin and decided to leave their group. He requested the other three to pretend they didn't know him to avoid further trouble. Understanding the gravity of the situation, Hyung-min simply nodded. Seun turned and left, maintaining his air of cool detachment. Juntae immediately followed, protesting that he wouldn't allow Seun to bear the burden alone. But Seun, facing a life-altering decision, put on a brave face, insisting he was fine, and that he was the one choosing to leave, even though it was clear he was putting on an act. Later that day, Seun encountered some students from another school. Just as he braced for a beating, they recognized him as someone Baekjin had explicitly warned them not to touch. He walked away unscathed, his reputation preceding him. Meanwhile, as the remaining trio prepared to leave school, Hoo-min suddenly feigned a date and vanished into thin air. leaving the other two bewildered. At that moment, Baekjin's crew made their move, targeting Hyuntak and blocking his path. It turned out Hyuntak had a dark history with them, having been previously assaulted by the group. But this time, he stood his ground, urging Juntae to run while he held them off. Juntae, blessed with incredible speed, sprinted away like the wind, evading his pursuers with the agility of a seasoned track star. Knowing that whoever reached a phone first had the advantage, Juntae made a desperate call to Seun for help. And just as he called, Seun called back and sped off like the wind, ready to jump into combat for his brotherhood. Hoo-min, meanwhile, trudged to the entertainment venue to confront Baekjin. And this is where things get interesting, folks. He went alone, no backup, no posse. A true lone wolf, walking into a potentially deadly showdown, straight out of an action movie. Hoo-min stormed into Baekjin's room, unleashing a flurry of blows, smashing things left and right, venting the fiery rage within him. But Baekjin, unfazed, responded with a lecture. He calmly explained that he still considered Hoo-min a close friend and proposed an alliance. But Hoo-min wasn't having any of it. He called Baekjin an idiot and flatly rejected the offer. Baekjin, his face as thick as bulletproof glass, retorted that Hoo-min was the real fool, and then, cutting to the core of the matter, asked, "Is Hyuntak alright?" Stung by the question, Hoo-min stormed out, ostensibly to avoid further negativity, but truly out of concern for his friend. As he exited, Baekjin's goons swarmed him like flies on. Well, you get the picture. Hoo-min, undeterred, fought them off one by one, like swatting mosquitoes, single-handedly taking down the entire group. On the rooftop, Hyuntak was being brutally beaten by Song-jae, who showed no mercy, as if playing a video game on the hardest difficulty setting. Juntae, meanwhile, was being held captive, like a chicken waiting to be plucked. Song-ji seemed to have a personal vendetta against Hyuntak, focusing his attacks solely on him, leaving Juntae untouched, though equally terrified. Hyuntak was beaten to the point where he could barely stand, the sight that made Juntae's blood run cold. Downstairs, Hoo-min continued his rampage, pummeling Baekjin's men. Just as he was down to the last two, Baekjin unexpectedly let him go, as if performing an act of charity. This gesture so infuriated Hoo-min that he almost turned back for another round, but ultimately chose to prioritize his friends and leave, casting a venomous glare at the smirking Baekjin as he raced towards the rooftop. At the same time, Seun, having witnessed his friends beating via a phone call, was sprinting to the rescue. On the way, he encountered two strangers excitedly commenting on a viral video. It turned out that Hyuntak and Juntae's beating was being filmed and had become an online sensation. While waiting for Seun's arrival, Hyuntak was practically spitting blood. But seeing Juntae cowering against a fence like a helpless puppy, he found the strength to get back on his feet and fight. However, he was already badly injured and no match for Song-ji. Sadly, Hyuntak was pummeled again before being tossed into the corner, where the battered and barely conscious Juntae lay. With the beating complete, Song-ji calmly adjusted his glasses and snapped a picture of his battered victims. Like a hunter posing with his trophy, just as he captured this image of victory, Si-yeon appeared, handsome and composed, his expression as cold as cash. He surveyed the scene of destruction before him, wasted no time with questions, dropped his backpack, and launched himself at Song-ji. Armed with a small pen, but fueled by a rage the size of a rice cooker, he lunged, aiming for Song-ji, who swiftly snatched the pen from his grasp. He tossed it aside, mocking Seun for fighting with a pen like a woman, implying a real man would use his fists. And so, the two clashed like brawling schoolboys. Song-ji landed the first blow, a powerful punch that sent Seun sprawling to the ground. Undeterred, Seun used his surroundings to his advantage. He kicked a potted plant, creating a cloud of dust to blind his opponent. Then grabbed Song-ji's glasses, broke them, and jabbed the sharp end into his leg, eliciting a yelp of pain that was almost comical. Seun may not have been the strongest fighter, but he was resourceful. Who said bookworms couldn't fight? It became a bizarre dance of attack and defense, one trying to punch the head of the person stabbing his leg, the other relentlessly targeting the same leg. Seun, attempting a finishing blow with the broken glasses, was blocked. The fight continued, the two grappling and punching with a ferocity that suggested they'd never fight again. Seun stumbled after a well-placed kick from Song-ji, who seized the opportunity to land another blow to his face. But the sight of his two friends lying unconscious spurred Seun to get back up, fighting through the pain, each blow making even the viewers wince. He endured a relentless barrage of punches from Song-ji, looking as if he was about to cough up blood. Suddenly, in a surprising move, he used his forehead like a battering ram, slamming it down on Song-ji's injured leg. A scream echoed through the air, audible probably even across the ocean. The fight ended with both of them collapsing unconscious, a scene both tragic and awe-inspiring. They'd fought to the bitter end. Victory or defeat be damned. The highlight came at the end as Hu Min arrived, accompanied by the wail of police sirens, sending the bullies scattering. He found Seun lying motionless amidst the debris, his face bloodied like something out of a dramatic action film. In his dazed state, Seun mistook Hu Min for Suho. The episode opens with Hyun-tak imparting his fighting wisdom to the group's weakest link, Jun-tae. His fighting lessons looked more like a gentle Tai Chi class than actual combat training. Meanwhile, Hu Min and Seun were having a heart-to-heart, delving into the past. It's revealed that Hyun-tak was once a skilled professional athlete. But as life often has it, tragedy struck during a hangout with Hu Min. Hyun-tak suffered a severe ligament injury in an accident, effectively ending his promising career and sending him straight to the hospital. Like an emergency military draft, the DR, examining the scans, shook his head, confirming the devastating news. Hyun-tak could no longer pursue his athletic dreams and had to retire prematurely. Hyun-tak's mother was heartbroken, and Hu Min, haunted by the incident, felt a wave of guilt wash over him. Every time he saw Hyun-tak's face, like the rising tide, the experience had a profound impact on Hu Min, shaping his perspective on life. As the mood turned somber, Seun shared that he, too, had once similarly lost a friend. Seun woke up in Hu Min's house. It turned out Hu Min had carried him there after their escape. Song-ji, meanwhile, was being pursued by the police like in a primetime crime drama. Instead of gratitude, Seun questioned Hu Min's decision to run, arguing that running away wouldn't solve the problem permanently. Hu Min then revealed his complicated history with Baek-jin, explaining their shared, troubled past as childhood friends. The scene then shifted, the tension tightening like a drawn bowstring, as Hu Min called Baek-jin to concede defeat. He believed Baek-jin simply wanted to witness his downfall and then retreat into silence. Like a grain of salt lost in the desert, perhaps Baek-jin felt differently, but he accepted the concession without a word. Later, Baek-jin picked up Song-ji from the police station. He led him to a squalid, blood-stained location, the stench of which was so overpowering that even the stoic Song-ji complained. Unfazed, Baek-jin questioned Song-ji about what he had told the police, as only Song-ji had access to his confidential information. Song-ji, feigning offense, declared he needed a break from their association, hurt by the implication that he wasn't trusted. The next morning after school, Baek-jin was confronted by a group of shady-looking individuals, waiting for him like insurance salesmen, looking for their next client. They told him their boss wanted a word and invited him into their car. Baek-jin, however, refused. The men immediately resorted to force, grabbing him by the collar like they were towing a broken-down car. Baek-jin wasn't one to back down and fought back instantly. A brawl erupted without warning. The comical part was that Baek-jin single-handedly took down both men, leaving them in a heap like discarded trash after a festival. As he fought, he taunted them, saying, "I told you I could handle this myself, but you didn't believe me. Did you really need to see me get physical?" Later, as the group enjoyed a moment of peace, Hu Min received a call from the police station. His father, apparently involved in an altercation, was now in custody. Hu Min bolted upright and ran to the station like a man possessed. Seeing his father behind bars, he panicked and called Baekjin for help. Baekjin, however, didn't answer, sending a chillingly indifferent text message instead, stating that what he really wanted was for Hoo-min to join the union. At that moment, Baekjin's crew strolled past Hoo-min, triggering his rage. He unleashed a furious attack on them right in front of the police station. Badly beaten, they called Baekjin to report the incident. Baekjin remained unmoved, simply commenting that Hyung-min was doing well. Baekjin then arrived at his headquarters, where Chairman Choi awaited him, seated on a throne of power. The entertainment venue, which everyone assumed was just a place for picking up girls, it was actually Choi's as well. In Choi's presence, Baekjin became as docile as a leashed puppy. Upon hearing Baekjin's report, Choi smashed his fist through a table, like someone breaking open a piggy bank, blood dripping from his hand. It was a clear warning to his favorite underling. Failure has consequences. That evening, as Seun dragged himself home, his mother delivered a bombshell. She announced that she was sending him abroad to study, reasoning that staying in Korea meant a constant cycle of bruises and injuries. Seun protested, but his mother, heartbroken by the daily beatings her son endured, insisted. Mother and son clashed. Tears and accusations exchanged. Seun, feeling trapped and desperate, longed for his friends but felt powerless. The next day, he went to school to request the necessary paperwork for studying abroad. His mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts about his future, his education, and the bonds of friendship. Hoo-min, equally distraught over Baekjin and his father's situation, skipped school that morning. His father barged into his room, delivering a harsh lecture on responsibility that would send anyone straight to therapy. Feeling utterly misunderstood by his own family, Hoo-min stormed out, his frustration simmering. As he wandered the streets, his phone rang. It was Baekjin. His voice was icy, his words a direct attack on Hoo-min's pride, forcing him to choose between his friends and his family. Infuriated, Hoo-min wanted to throw his phone against the wall. He headed to Baekjin's entertainment venue, where the arrogant Suknam greeted him with a resounding slap across the face. Hoo-min retaliated with a swift, powerful punch. Suknam then revealed that he had joined the union and wanted to discuss something important with Hoo-min. Meanwhile, at home, Seun was filling out his study abroad application, passport and plane ticket ready. His mind a chaotic mess. Suddenly, Hyun-tak and Juntae called, inviting him out for one last hurrah. They went to play basketball, pretending to be cheerful, but the underlying sadness was palpable. They knew about Seun's impending departure and were trying to be supportive, but their expressions were more melancholic than celebratory. Seun, sensing something amiss, called Hoo-min. On the other end of the line, Hoo-min, fighting back tears, feigned indifference, coldly telling Seun that it was none of his business. Starting to sound detached while clearly caring deeply. It was a classic scene of a painful goodbye, filled with unspoken emotions. After the call, Hoo-min walked resolutely towards Baekjin's headquarters, where a group of underlings awaited him. Baekjin, standing in the center, with a villainous grin, invited Hoo-min to join the union with a look. The scene then cuts to Seun at the airport, passport and ticket in hand, ready to fly away from all the fighting. As he waited to check in, Juntae called. The thought of parting ways with his newfound friends so soon brought a wave of emotion. His voice thick with unshed tears, he poured his heart out, like a heartfelt letter from a lovesick teenager, expressing their understanding and shared experiences. Bringing Seun to tears, there were the tears of someone who had finally found understanding, but now had to say goodbye. This realization made Seun question his decision to leave. He had finally found true friends who listened and empathized with him. Suddenly, Hyun-tak arrived, breathless and frantic. Having heard that Seun wasn't leaving after all, he'd run as if pursued by demons, his face etched with worry. Ironically, Seun didn't greet him with a joyful smile. His expression remained blank as he immediately asked about Hoo-min, who had apparently made a deal with Baekjin to maintain peace and prevent further conflict. Hearing this, Hyuntak's smile faded, the logic of the situation undeniable. The three friends sat in silence, a shared sense of unease hanging heavy in the air. While they worried about their missing friend, Hoo-min was embarking on his new career as a gang leader. He immediately encountered a seemingly timid opponent whose hands moved faster than his brain. The opponent attacked first, landing a few blows, but Hoo-min remained motionless, like a stone statue, leading his attacker to believe he was a pushover. But Hoo-min was playing possum, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He then unleashed a furious barrage of punches, beating his opponent to a pulp before he could even beg for mercy. The onlookers, witnessing the brutal display, rushed to intervene, but Hoo-min's expression remained cold and impassive. After the fight, Hoo-min met with Baekjin, who handed him a thick envelope stuffed with cash. Hoo-min was bewildered, wondering what Baekjin was up to. Suddenly handing out a bonus like this, he felt like he was being paid to keep quiet, but the money was actually meant for his father's bail. Hoo-min stared at the envelope, the weight of the money heavy in his hands, not because of its physical heft, but because it felt like a Faustian bargain. He didn't want to accept it, sensing it was a bribe to lure him into further shady dealings. Despite his reservations, he took the money and walked away from the squalid place, his frustration simmering beneath the surface. Stepping outside, he witnessed a group of students fighting. It wasn't a real fight, but a flashback to the past. A memory of him and Baekjin standing in the same spot, witnessing a similar scene. It was that shared, painful memory that had fractured their friendship. The next morning, the group went to Hoo-min's house, knocking until their knuckles were sore. But there was no answer. Just as they were about to give up, Hoo-min's father appeared. They followed him inside, expecting a polite conversation and maybe some refreshments. Instead, he poured them shots of hard liquor, like they were his drinking buddies. Before they could even raise their glasses, he launched into a tirade about his disrespectful son, who hadn't come home in days. Angered on their friend's behalf, they defended Hoo-min, each offering carefully worded yet impactful rebuttals that left his father speechless for a full 5 seconds. Seun, seeing the escalating tension, poured fuel on the fire, stating pointedly that the problem wasn't Hoo-min, but his father. This prompted Hoo-min's father to abruptly kick them out, like unwanted pests. Standing outside, shaken by the encounter, they tried to understand why Hoo-min had become so involved in fighting. They pondered but couldn't find a satisfactory answer. The trio then decided to seek out Hyo-man, hoping to extract information about Hoo-min's whereabouts and save him before it was too late. Flattered by their pleas, Hyo-man adopted an air of importance, like the CEO of a multi-level marketing company. Teasing them with the information he possessed, he finally offered a cryptic clue, hinting at a gambling den managed by Baekjin and operated by the infamous Chairman Choi. This place wasn't just a gambling den, it was a front for money laundering, employing a network of gangsters to both maintain the establishment and circulate the illicit funds. Everything had a legitimate facade. They even stole motorcycles, refurbished them, and resold them for profit, a well-organized operation. The police were aware of their activities, but turned a blind eye due to a lack of concrete evidence, allowing the gang to operate with impunity. After a heated exchange of insults, Hyo-man unexpectedly proposed an alliance with Seun's group for revenge. To his surprise, they immediately rejected him, flatly stating they didn't need him. Humiliated and furious, Hyo-man stormed off, his face burning with anger. Seun, looking at Hyuntak and Juntae, their faces still bruised and battered, couldn't bear to see them get hurt again. The group decided to postpone any action, needing time to devise a plan that was both intelligent and loyal to their friendship. Hoo-min returned home and placed the envelope of money on the table for his father. No sooner had he sat down than Baekjin called, barking orders like a mob boss, instructing him to steal a motorcycle, as if they were playing a real-life game of Grand Theft Auto. From top student to money launderer and thief, what a turn of events. Seun, having uncovered the truth, went alone to Baekjin's headquarters, alarming his friends, who couldn't understand his reckless move. Baekjin's men greeted him with a mixture of amusement and suspicion, but refused to let him see their boss. Seun, his face impassive, intimidated them enough that they cautiously backed down, unwilling to risk a confrontation. Meanwhile, Hyun-tak and Jun-tae found the abandoned factory where Baekjin stashed the stolen motorcycles. They snuck around, peeking through cracks in the walls, finally confirming their suspicions. That night, Hoo-min arrived at the factory, preparing to steal a motorcycle as instructed. Like completing a mission in a video game, as he was wheeling the bike away, Hyun-tak's phone rang. Hoo-min sighed deeply, as if releasing a burden, and then hung up, infuriating Hyun-tak, who nearly smashed his phone in frustration. Enraged, Hyun-tak, with Jun-tae in tow, stormed over to the factory, kicking the door open with the force of his anger. When no one answered, they decided to break in, their impatience reaching a boiling point. After some struggling, they finally managed to get inside. They stealthily explored the factory, eventually discovering a piece of incriminating evidence: Hoo-min's tiger print boxers hanging on a clothesline. The boxers clearly showcased their unique taste. This confirmed their suspicions about Hoo-min's involvement. Continuing their search, they stumbled upon a stack of suspicious documents and decided to take them as leverage against Baekjin. The documents contained evidence of money laundering, motorcycle theft, and other illicit activities, painting a clear picture of high school mafia operations. Meanwhile, Seun directly confronted Baekjin, cutting straight to the chase, asking how a top student like him could get involved in illegal activities. He correctly guessed that Hoo-min was aware of everything. Baekjin listened, his expression unchanging, like a true villain. He knew Seun was there as a distraction, while his friends infiltrated the factory. This realization put him on the defensive. Seeing his plan exposed, Seun prepared to throw the first punch, but before he could, Hoo-min appeared like a Deus Ex machine, pulling Seun away. Outside, Seun explained that Hyun-tak and Jun-tae were in danger and needed immediate help. Hoo-min agreed to stay and handled Baekjin while Seun went to rescue their friends. He bluntly told Baekjin he wouldn't steal the motorcycle and declared their association over, their paths diverging as if they'd never met. Baekjin could only watch him go, a bitter taste in his mouth. Back at the factory, Hyun-tak and Jun-tae had found the incriminating documents related to the stolen motorcycles. Overjoyed, like they'd discovered buried treasure. As they prepared to leave, Baekjin's men suddenly appeared, blocking the exit. As usual, Jun-tae hid behind Hyun-tak. A fierce fight erupted, Hyun-tak landing punches, while Jun-tae clutched the precious documents. The battle raged, eventually becoming a 2-on-2 showdown. Hyun-tak endured a brutal beating, getting knocked down repeatedly, but always getting back up. Just as a decisive blow was about to land, Jun-tae bravely jumped in front of Hyun-tak, taking the hit for his friend. It was a true testament to their enduring bond. Clutching the documents, they ran for their lives, pursued like they were in a scene from a chase movie, finally reaching safety, breathless and on the verge of tears. As Seun raced to help his friends, he received a call from the hospital. Suho was in critical condition. The hospital, having only Seun's contact information, called him seeking a way to reach Suho's family. The news of his friend's dire situation stopped Seun in his tracks, his face draining of color. Hyun-tak and Jun-tae continued their desperate flight, running through alleyways and streets, eventually finding refuge under an old truck, hiding like ninjas in the shadows. Hyun-tak marveled at the effectiveness of their hiding spot, while Jun-tae, ever the experienced victim of bullying, boasted about his hiding expertise. Assuring his friend they were safe, they shared a relieved laugh, believing they had escaped unscathed, ready to celebrate their victory. But their laughter was cut short. One of the enemies spotted them, and the chase was on. It was like a scene straight out of a survival game. One guy went straight for Hyun-tak, tackling him to the ground. Another chased Jun-tae, his sole focus on getting those documents back. And the kicker? After snatching the papers, he didn't just run. He proceeded to punch Jun-tae repeatedly, yelling, "What are you even going to do with these?" It was so absurd, it was almost comical. Beaten and bruised, the two friends couldn't even muster a whimper. Just when it seemed like they were about to become nameless, faceless casualties, Hu Min arrived on the scene. Seeing his friends lying there like fallen leaves in autumn, his fury ignited. He glared at their attackers with the intensity of 1,000 burning suns. Without a word, one of the enemies lunged at Hu Min. They even tried a cheap shot. A guy on a motorcycle attempted a blindside hit from behind. But Hu Min dodged it like a ninja and countered with a kick that sent the attacker flying into a wall. The motorcyclist, undeterred, came back swinging a club. Hu Min didn't even flinch. He punched straight through the guy's helmet. Crack! The helmet shattered, and the rider went flying off his bike like a firework. The last remaining enemy stood frozen, his face as pale as a ghost. He looked terrified, practically begging for mercy. But Hu Min wasn't about to let him off easy. He grabbed the guy by the throat, his grip so tight that Hyun-tak had to intervene. Seeing Hyun-tak struggling, Jun-tae rushed to help. But just then, his phone rang. After the call, Jun-tae went white as a sheet, his voice trembling as he yelled, "Seun's been in an accident. He's at the hospital." Everything stopped. The fight, the anger, everything. They all scrambled to their feet and raced to the hospital like moths to a flame. Arriving, they were met with a chilling sight. Seun lay motionless in the intensive care unit, his mother sobbing uncontrollably beside her. The group stood there, speechless, the weight of potential loss hanging heavy in the air. Lost in a deep coma, Seun's subconscious mind retreated to a quiet corner, where he watched her three friends playing happily, seemingly without a care in the world. Suddenly, Suho appeared in the corner, his eyes filled with sadness. He spoke to Seun, telling him something about everyone eventually meeting the same fate. He spoke of how those left behind are always the ones who suffer the most, enduring the pain of separation and loss. His words pierced Seun's heart like shards of glass. Even in her dreams, he couldn't escape the weight of self-blame and regret. Outside the ICU, Hyun-tak, Jun-tae, and Hu Min sat huddled together, their eyes red-rimmed and their hearts heavy with guilt. They couldn't bring themselves to look Seun's mother in the eye. Instead of yelling or blaming them, she spoke softly. "Seun's going to be okay. You boys go home and get some rest." They all shook their heads in unison. "It's okay. We're Seun's friends. We're not leaving him." They expected a heartwarming moment, a shared understanding of their loyalty. But Seun's mother's reaction took a sharp, unexpected turn. Tears streaming down her face, she pleaded, "Please don't be friends with Seun anymore. I'm begging you." The three friends froze, caught between laughter and tears. They didn't know how to react to this heartbreaking request. They stood there, silently swallowing their own tears, understanding for the first time the profound helplessness they felt in the face of an adult's pain. Meanwhile, Baek Jin discovered a page missing from his ledger, detailing illegal vehicle sales. His face darkened, like a man who just lost his deed to his house. He ordered his men to hunt down the perpetrators at all costs. Before everything went south, his eyes were filled with a mixture of darkness and rage, directed especially at Hu Min. It was clear he was plotting his revenge. That morning, Hu Min returned home to face his father. His dad continued his usual routine of scolding him, but his hands were busy preparing a meal. A subtle welcome for his stubborn son. During the meal, he roughly tossed a piece of fish cake at Hu Min. "Eat," he grunted, his tone a mixture of frustration and concern, before the food got cold. Hu Min's father pushed the stack of money Hu Min had left on the table towards him. "Return it," he said. He didn't care how his son had earned the money. He refused to use it. Hu Min sat silently, like a statue, not saying a word. His father continued, recounting how one of Hu Min's friends had come looking for him earlier that day, expressing frustration that one of them, despite looking decent, had dared to lecture him. He sighed, then said that Hu Min was lucky to have friends who searched for him when he was missing, while he himself was lonely and no one cared. He spoke about the preciousness of such strong friendships, something to be cherished for a lifetime. As he spoke, tears began to well up in his eyes. They weren't tears of anger, but tears of pain and regret. Hoo-min finally broke down. He understood that he was the one who had dragged his friends into danger. It was because of him that Seun was now lying unconscious in the ICU. In that moment, he wept like a child who had just lost the most precious thing in the world. The scene shifted back to Seun, still pale and motionless in the ICU. Juntae sat silently on a bus, holding the page from the motorcycle ledger, his mind heavy with worry. He thought about Seun, his cool yet warm gaze, and wondered what he should do with this mess. After much deliberation, Juntae decided to take the document to the police, hoping for a glimmer of light in the chaos. He nervously explained that he only had this record, but the officer refused to investigate, citing a lack of invoices or concrete evidence. While seemingly by the book, the officer's expression was shifty, like a seasoned actor performing. He tried to manipulate Juntae, suggesting he leave the document for further investigation. But Juntae's gut screamed danger. He snatched the paper back and bolted out of the station like a rabbit fleeing a wolf. He knew if he stayed, something bad would happen. As soon as Juntae left, the officer sighed, his true colors revealing themselves. He was clearly in cahoots with Baekjin's operation. Juntae's relief was short-lived. Baekjin's goons ambushed him, dragging him into a dark alley and beating him like a punching bag. They then burned the incriminating document, but Baekjin wasn't satisfied. He showed up personally, demanding to know if Juntae had made copies. "You say it's not important." Juntae spat back, despite being bruised and bloodied. "Then why are you so scared? Why did you have to chase me down and burn it?" He refused to back down, demanding the safe release of Hoo-min and Hyun-tak before he would delete any photos he might have taken. Infuriated, they kicked him relentlessly. Juntae just shielded his head, thinking only of protecting his friends. Suddenly, Song-ji appeared, his presence so commanding that even the thugs paused their assault. He looked at Juntae, sighed, and advised him to cooperate. He pointed out he was no longer part of the alliance, so Juntae shouldn't expect any favors. Juntae stubbornly replied, "I don't take orders from punks like you." Song-ji recognized the kid's foolish bravery and, without another word, proceeded to dismantle the thugs, unleashing a flurry of punches like he was taking out his frustrations on a weekend punching bag. By the time Hoo-min and Hyun-tak arrived, the fight was over. Juntae sat on the ground, Song-ji standing over him like a reluctant bodyguard. Hoo-min and Hyun-tak rushed to help Juntae up. Hoo-min hesitated, looking at Song-ji with gratitude but unsure how to express it. Song-ji just smirked and offered a casual remark. "You're the school boss." "Hoo-min," Song-ji said, a hint of something in his voice. "But Seun, he's the real deal." Hoo-min simply nodded, a quiet acknowledgement, and thanked Song-ji as he walked away. Back at his base, Baekjin found his boss, Choi, in a rage. Choi's face was red as a beet, furious at Baekjin's incompetent management of his crew and the botched stolen motorcycle operation. He yelled, throwing things around in a fit of anger. But Baekjin, his face impassive, argued back point by point, showing no respect. "I'm a boss myself now," he practically snarled. "You can't intimidate me." This defiance only fueled Choi's anger. But seeing that a shouting match wouldn't get him anywhere, he finally stormed off. As they walked, Juntae confessed, his voice weak, that he had kept a page from a ledger, which was why he'd been chased down. The others were stunned, caught between anger and a grudging admiration. Juntae, it turned out, was just as crazy as Seun, willing to risk everything for his friends. Hoo-min froze, guilt stabbing at his heart, but Hyun-tak wouldn't let him wallow. He snapped Hoo-min out of it and urged them to get Juntae to the hospital and to visit Seun, knowing they all had unspoken things weighing on their minds. The next morning, Hoo-min went full-on daredevil mode, armed with a megaphone. He stood alone in the middle of the schoolyard and called out Baekjin. Like a scene from a challenge video, Baekjin was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe Hu Min had the guts to show up and openly challenge him at his school. He was furious. He'd been carefully cultivating his image as a cool, untouchable boss. And here was Hu Min exposing him as a gangster. Seeing Hu Min standing there alone, like he was ready to take on the world, someone in the crowd yelled that Hu Min was challenging the entire alliance. Looking for allies for one final epic showdown, Hyun Tak joined in, grabbing a megaphone and rallying the entire school to Hu Min's side. His voice echoed across the courtyard, igniting the atmosphere like a stadium before a championship game. And in that moment, the true face of Yoon Jong Hai began to emerge. It was a place where oppression simmered beneath the surface. A place where all it took was one brave soul to stand up and others, still clinging to their self-respect, would join the fight. Meanwhile, Seun remained unconscious. Hu Min went to his bedside, watching his friend lie motionless, filled with regret for everything that had led them to this point, for dragging them into this cycle of violence. He then went to see Seun's mother. He bowed his head, apologizing, and turned to leave, assuming she wouldn't want to see him again. But she called him back, gently explaining that Seun hadn't suffered a severe physical injury. He was in a coma, brought on by psychological trauma. He needed time to heal, and when he would wake up depended entirely on his own will to fight. In his subconscious, Seun was being pulled away by Suho. Like a friend, reluctant to let go, Suho held Seun's hand, wanting him to stay in this dreamlike world. But Seun remained aware, remembering his family, his friends, everything he held dear. He gently released Suho's hand, choosing to return to reality. And in that moment of decisive choice, Seun's eyes suddenly flew open. He bolted upright as if jolted awake, desperate to find Suho. His mind was a whirlwind of pain and confusion, like a ball squeezed to the point of bursting. Hu Min, trying to contain his own emotions, gently reassured Seun that his friend was okay, that nothing serious had happened. It turned out Suho's heart rate had become unstable. The hospital couldn't reach his grandmother, so they'd called Seun's number. The news hit Seun like a punch to the gut. He made his way to the hospital, each step heavy with dread. Seeing Suho alive and stable, he finally let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned to leave, his mind a chaotic mess. Like a Korean drama with no escape in sight. His heart ached. His mind urged him to be strong, but all he wanted to do was cry. And then amidst the turmoil of his thoughts, he saw them. His 3 best friends, waiting for him. They huddled together like puppies caught in the rain, waiting for their owner. The sight brought a flicker of a smile to Seun's lips. For the first time in days, his eyes lit up, seeing the genuine care in their faces. Juntae, in particular, looked like he was about to burst into tears, having feared the worst. Hu Min, putting on a brave face, declared that real men don't cry, now that Seun was awake. But Seun immediately shot him down, reminding him that he'd seen Hu Min crying like a baby just the day before. They all laughed, the tension finally breaking. Despite having just woken up, Seun didn't forget what was important. He immediately asked about Baekjin, his eyes filled with a steely resolve. After Seun fully recovered, they all headed to the location of the impending showdown with the Alliance. The air thick with anticipation, like the moments before an action movie explodes onto the screen. The scene cuts to Song-ji. Everyone knew he was Baekjin's most trusted ally within the Alliance. He'd just been treated to a meal by Seun, yet his face was still etched with resentment, like a man who'd won the lottery but lost the ticket. As he ate, he grumbled about how angry and frustrated he still was, but Seun put on a masterful performance. Feigning a sleepy, innocent look to manipulate Song-ji, he softly apologized and proposed a collaboration. His words like honey. Intrigued, Song-ji thought, "All right, let's see what you've got," and agreed to hear him out. Seun laid out his plan. If Song-ji helped dismantle the Alliance, he would escape unscathed. It sounded reasonable enough, so Song-ji agreed. Deal sealed. With the persuasion complete, Si-Yun took off like the wind to study his opponent's strategy. He analyzed every detail like a chess grandmaster, developing a meticulous plan. Recognizing that Yun Zhang was severely outnumbered, he knew the best approach wasn't a head-on assault, but to divide the enemy from within. He was in full strategist mode, radiating confidence like a general about to lead his troops into battle. His next target was the cunning Hyoman. The plan: have Hyoman pretend to be Baek Jin withdrawing funds, creating the illusion that Baek Jin was skimming money from his crew. The missing money would naturally cause chaos among the ranks, like ants in a boiling pot. Suspicion and discord would fester, turning them against each other. Meanwhile, Hyun-tak diligently trained, doing push-ups and sit-ups like a soldier preparing for war. Hu-min confided in him, revealing that despite his tough exterior, he's still worried about Baek Jin. After all, they had been close friends since childhood. Baek Jin wasn't oblivious. Lost in thought one morning, he received a call from a teacher at the orphanage where he'd grown up. She told him to stop sending money and gifts. It seemed like a simple request, but it was a thinly veiled accusation. She was starting to suspect something was amiss, wondering how he'd become so wealthy so quickly. Baek Jin froze, his face as still as a lake on a windless autumn day. The day of the showdown arrived, a day of relentless rain. The heavens humans opened, drenching the schoolyard. The scene was epic. Each side stood holding umbrellas in the downpour, looking impossibly cool, like something out of a blockbuster film. Baek Jin's crew arrived early, radiating a menacing aura. Humans' group arrived later, each step on the wet pavement, somehow exuding effortless style. Suddenly, a large group of Yunjang students appeared behind Juntae and Hyun-tak. They arrived like a storm surge, ready to reclaim the reputation that had been trampled by the alliance. Even more surprising, Hyoman, with his trademark mischievous grin, stood among them, umbrella in hand, ready to join the fight, as if he'd never betrayed anyone. It was clear, even with internal conflicts, when it came to their friends, they were united, their bond as strong as superglue. Just then, Seun received a text from Song-ji, claiming to have evidence against Baek Jin. Seun rushed to the meeting point. Song-ji presented a phone, supposedly containing all the secrets. Seun thought he had it in the bag, but suddenly he was blindsided. Song-ji hadn't been so easily swayed. A large man lurking in the shadows ambushed Seun, choking him until he passed out. Meanwhile, Hu-min stood in the schoolyard, heart swelling with pride as he saw his friend arrive, ready for the showdown. But he quickly realized Seun was missing. Juntae immediately tried calling him, but the only response was the automated message indicating the phone was out of service. He knew something was wrong. Seun had confirmed he was on his way. A disconnected phone could only mean trouble. Without a word, Juntae left the group to search for his friend. Hu-min led the Yunjang students towards Baek Jin's crew, determined to dismantle the alliance once and for all. As he walked, he strategized, instructing his friends to take on the remaining members of the alliance. Hyoman, standing beside him, yelled, "Okay," with the enthusiasm of a fishmonger at a market. Then all hell broke loose. It was a chaotic free-for-all, punches and kicks flying in the pouring rain. Fueled by long, simmering resentment, the battle was about to explode. As the large man prepared to finish Seun off, he suddenly woke up. Grabbing a nearby object, he struck the man. Just as Juntae arrived, they found Seun stumbling out of the room. Before they could escape, the large man recovered and attacked Seun again. The two friends found themselves facing him once more. His size gave him an advantage, charging at them like a raging bull, sending the slider Juntae crashing to the ground, injured. Seun wanted to get Juntae to a hospital, but Juntae stubbornly refused. Right now, the priority is taking down the alliance, he insisted. Everything else can wait. Back at the main battle, the students continued to clash. One tackled another, bringing him down. Another landed a kick that sent his opponent crashing to the ground. Headfirst, the fight raged on, each blow fueled by anger and frustration. The tension was palpable, like a real-life martial arts movie. adrenaline pumping through the veins of everyone present. Finally, Baek-jin reached Hoo-min. They locked eyes. A millennium's worth of animosity brewing between them, like two lions about to clash in a fight to the death. Meanwhile, Seun was racing to reinforce his friends. But before he could arrive, Baek-jin struck first, landing a series of powerful blows on Hoo-min. Hoo-min, wincing, actually chuckled, complimenting Baek-jin's improved punching power. Then, without hesitation, he retaliated. A single, well-placed punch dislocated Baek-jin's shoulder. Seeing his childhood friend writhing in pain, Hoo-min's face hardened. There was no room for sentimentality now. This was a fight for survival. They clashed, punches flying without mercy, each blow echoing through the schoolyard. Suddenly, Hoo-min was hit with a devastating blow from Baek-jin and collapsed to the ground, motionless. One of the alliance members yelled triumphantly, declaring Baek-jin the victor. Seeing Baek-jin standing over Hoo-min like a final boss, the others stopped fighting. Baek-jin seized the moment, announcing that Yoon Jang-hae was now officially part of the alliance, challenging anyone who disagreed to step forward. Just then, like a hero in a movie, Seun emerged, wielding a spike club. His face as cold as steel, his presence radiating an aura of righteous fury. Everyone watched nervously. This was a clash of titans, and no one dared interfere. They held their breath, anticipating a brutal showdown, a fight where only one would walk away. Seeing Seun's defiance, Baek-jin's face flushed with rage. He tried to project an air of dominance, pretending he wasn't afraid. But he subtly hid one hand in his sleeve as he threw a punch at Seun wasn't backing down. He fought with a combined weight of Hoo-min's and his friend's pain on his shoulders. The two traded blows, the intensity of the fight electrifying the air. When Seun fell, he refused to give up, striking repeatedly at Baek-jin's legs, causing him to buckle in pain. They continued their brutal exchange. Determined to settle the score then and there, Baek-jin, reeling from several powerful blows, finally collapsed. His leg twisted at an unnatural angle. The Yoonjang students erupted in cheers, but the fight wasn't over. Despite the pain, Baek-jin struggled to his feet, his eyes burning with hatred, fixated on Seun. Whether from exhaustion or some other reason, Seun began to falter, absorbing blow after blow from Baek-jin. Each blow landed like a hammer, leaving Seun reeling. Then, a vicious hook connected with his face, sending him sprawling to the ground. Everyone thought he was down for the count. But Seun, his mouth full of blood, somehow managed to stagger to his feet, his eyes blazing with a warrior spirit. He lunged at Baek-jin, relentlessly attacking his injured leg. As if trying to break it, Baek-jin shoved him away, but Seun wouldn't let up. He unleashed a barrage of punches to Baek-jin's face, each blow fueled by pain and fury. Baek-jin was clearly hurt, but in a last desperate act, he grabbed Seun's fist, pulled him in, and delivered a devastating counterpunch that sent Seun crashing back down. He lay motionless, while Baek-jin's crew erupted in laughter. Baek-jin, struggling to breathe, stood over him, his eyes still burning with malice. He finally realized that Seun had been targeting his weak points all along. His leg, his arm, and now his very ability to fight. Enraged, he yelled, "Get up. Come on, fight me. Let's see how long you can last." His challenge echoed through the rain-soaked schoolyard, setting the stage for the final act. Seun, lying on the ground, his mouth full of blood, still managed to utter a defiant, "You're still within my control, even if my limbs are useless." It turned out Seun's desperate, brutal fight had been a distraction, buying time for Hoo-min to recover. Just as Baek-jin realized he'd been played, Hoo-min reappeared like an avenging angel, delivering a thunderous blow that sent Baek-jin's body trembling. The force of the impact was so visible that everyone watching could see Baek-jin shaking. Hoo-min followed up with a final decisive blow, knocking Baek-jin to the ground, where he lay still, like a punching bag after a knockout punch. Silence fell over the schoolyard. Everyone knew Baek-jin was done. His crew stood frozen, their faces pale with shock, victorious, but not triumphant. Min bowed his head and apologized to Baekjin for everything. Baekjin, his pride still intact, refused to apologize in return. Min declared the fight over, allowing the Yunjiang students to retreat with their heads held high. The tension that had gripped the schoolyard finally dissipated. Seun slowly rose to his feet. He walked towards Baekjin, silently looking down at him with a mixture of pity and regret, before turning and walking away without a word. It was a quiet ending, but one that carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. The Yunjiang students, battered and bruised, stumbled towards the bus stop, looking like they just crawled out of hell. They were barely able to walk, each step a struggle. Then they saw Juntae limping toward them, looking just as rough. They all piled onto the bus, collapsing onto the seats, exhausted, heads resting on each other. Oblivious to the world outside, the weight of the brutal, beautiful, heartbreaking battle finally behind them. Time passed. They entered their final year of high school, their faces etched with a newfound maturity. After the life or death struggle they'd endured, rumors of Baekjin's disappearance spread through the school like wildfire. No one knew where he'd gone or what he was doing, and no one had any definitive answers. Seun often sat lost in thought, his gaze distant, as if searching through shattered memories. Thinking about Baekjin and everything that had happened, Min approached him, gently ruffling his hair in a gesture of affection. Sa-yun, no longer the sullen, prickly character he once was, simply smiled, a sign that he had learned to forgive, both himself and others. Lost in contemplation, Sa-yun suddenly received a phone call. Without a word, he jumped up, pulling his 3 friends along with him, racing towards an unknown destination. Seun led the way, his eyes shining with an unusual light. There, waiting for him, was Suho, the friend he thought he'd lost, sitting in a wheelchair, looking at Seun with a vacant expression. Min gently encouraged Seun. "Go ahead, your friend is waiting." Seun took a deep breath and slowly approached Suho, each step heavy with unspoken emotion. Suho looked at Seun, then at the group of friends standing behind him, his face confused. "Who are they?" he asked. Seun smiled, his eyes welling up. "They're my friends," he replied. Those simple words seemed to lift a weight from both their shoulders. Suho smiled, a smile of quiet contentment and understanding, as if realizing that even in the cruelest of worlds, true friendship offered hope. In that moment, Seun smiled too. A genuine, bright smile, like a child finally free to run towards the light after a long, dark storm. Later, Songji was strolling through Baekjin's old territory when a stranger approached him, asking, "Are you Baekjin's friend?" Songji gave a non-committal answer, implying it didn't really matter whether he was or wasn't. The stranger offered Songji a chance to take Baekjin's place, but in a more VIP setting, a place where the money was even better. Songji scoffed, calling the place unromantic and tacky. But he pocketed the business card anyway. As he walked away, he hesitated, turning back to ask about Baekjin's whereabouts. But the stranger just shrugged, feigning ignorance. The scene abruptly shifted to Juntae, Min Hyuntak, and Seun, all with tears in their eyes. It was Baekjin's funeral. No one knew how or when he had died, but they mourned him nonetheless. The movie ended. Like and subscribe for more video. Thank you for watching.